It was a crisp autumn evening in Manhattan. The golden lights of the city reflected off the glass facade of Leclerc, the most exclusive restaurant in the borough. Inside, the soft hum of clinking silverware, murmurs of conversation, and laughter from wealthy patrons floated through the air. But outside, huddled against the corner of the building's awning, was a small girl who didn't belong in this world. Her name was Isabella Morales. She could not have been older than 8, with tangled black hair falling unevenly around her small, freckled face. Her shoes were patched with scraps of newspaper, and her coat had long lost its warmth. In her small hands rested a basket of wilted flowers, carefully arranged but clearly rescued from a trash pile. She stood there, shivering, whispering to herself, "Maybe today someone will buy them." Inside, a well-dressed maitre d' approached the entrance and immediately noticed her. His smile was practiced, but his words were ice. "No one like you can enter here. Only those who can afford it," he said sharply, as if the cold autumn wind weren't enough. Isabella froze. Her stomach growled loudly, louder than her voice, betraying the hours she had gone without a proper meal. She looked down, clutching the basket tightly, hoping to disappear into the shadows. And that's when Alexander Kingsley, the billionaire owner of Leclerc, appeared. He was 42, impeccably dressed, and a man whose name carried weight in the city. Yet, behind his tailored suit and calm expression, a hollow emptiness had been gnawing at him for months. Deals, gala events, awards, none of it had filled the void. He had everything but the feeling of having truly mattered. He paused as his gaze fell on the little girl. She wasn't crying or whining. She wasn't begging aggressively. She simply sat there, offering flowers to anyone passing by, trying to scrape together enough coins for dinner. Something about her stillness, her dignity, and her bravery cut through him in a way no business negotiation ever had. Alexander stepped closer. "Hello there," he said softly. Isabella lifted her eyes, wide behind crooked glasses. Would you like to buy a flower? $2 each." His chest tightened. "What's your name, sweetheart?" he asked, kneeling to meet her gaze. "Isabella," she said without hesitation. Her voice carried a quiet strength that belied her fragile frame. At that moment, the rich aromas from inside the restaurant wafted through the air: garlic, butter, freshly baked bread. Isabella's stomach gave another loud growl. She flushed, embarrassed, whispering, I shouldn't be here. People like me, we're not allowed in." Her words landed like a hammer blow to Alexander. The contrast between the polished, sparkling world inside and the little girl outside was unbearable. He saw the invisible line that society had drawn, and he made a decision that no one in the room, least of all the maitre d', would expect. "I own this restaurant," Alexander said quietly but firmly. "And tonight, you are coming inside with me." Isabella's eyes widened. "Even though I'm poor?" "Yes," he replied, "because courage, hope, and dignity are far more valuable than money." Her small hand trembled as she slipped it into his. In that instant, Alexander felt a memory of his own childhood resurface, a time when his mother had gone hungry to feed him, when a neighbor's kindness had changed everything. He had buried that memory under wealth and status, but now it was alive again, shining through the courage of a small girl. They walked through the doors. Inside, the restaurant seemed to hold its breath. Patrons turned, some in curiosity, others in shock, as the billionaire led a poor child to a corner booth. Crystal chandeliers reflected in her wide eyes. She touched the silverware cautiously, afraid to ruin anything. "Would you like something to eat?" Alexander asked gently. I don't know," Isabella whispered. "Mama, we usually have bread, rice, beans. That's all." Alexander called over the head chef. Prepare the finest children's meal you have. Warm, beautiful, special. The chef nodded, understanding the gravity behind the request. And as Isabella took her first hesitant bite, her tiny face lit up with a joy so pure it filled Alexander with a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in decades. Just as Isabella smiled, the doors opened again, and a woman stepped in. Alexander's heart skipped a beat. Time seemed to freeze. Recognition struck him like lightning. Could it be? The restaurant's warm glow enveloped Isabella as she tentatively took her first bite of the meal Alexander had arranged. Roasted chicken, buttery mashed potatoes, crisp green beans, and a small golden bread roll. Simple to the chefs, but to Isabella it was nothing short of magic. Her eyes sparkled as if each bite whispered, "Maybe the world isn't so cruel after all." Alexander watched her closely, feeling something stir deep inside. The hollow emptiness of wealth, the boardrooms, the parties, the endless accolades, faded to nothing compared to the warmth radiating from the girl before him. For the first time in years, he felt a surge of purpose, protection, care, and hope. But before he could speak again, the restaurant doors opened, and the air shifted. A woman stepped inside, her face partially hidden by a scarf, but her posture unmistakably familiar. Alexander's heart skipped a beat. Time seemed to pause, the clinking of silverware and murmurs of conversation fading into silence. It was Sophia's mother, Elena Morales, the woman he had loved deeply in his youth, before life had swept them in separate directions. Recognition hit them both like a tidal wave. Alexander's voice caught in his throat, barely a whisper. "Elena." She froze mid-step, eyes wide as they locked onto his. Memories rushed back in vivid, unstoppable waves, stolen kisses behind school hallways, promises whispered under starlit skies, laughter echoing in empty streets, and the heartbreak of parting when circumstances forced them apart. Elena's eyes searched his, disbelief and caution warring with a long-buried familiarity. "Alexander, it's been so long," she finally said, her voice low, careful. Her lips trembled, betraying the years of worry, hardship, and survival etched into her face. Isabella, sensing the tension, clutched her flower basket tightly and looked up at the man who had fed her so kindly. "Mama, this is the gentleman I told you about," she said softly, pride flickering in her voice. "He gave me dinner. He's so kind." Elena's gaze softened slightly at her daughter's words, but it remained guarded. She stepped closer, her hands brushing against Isabella's shoulder protectively. Alexander extended his hand, not as a businessman, but as the man who had once loved Elena and now stood ready to protect them both. "What are you doing here?" Elena asked cautiously, her voice tinged with years of weariness. "I saw her," Alexander said, nodding toward Isabella, "and I couldn't let her sit outside hungry. No child should." The weight of his words and the reality of his action struck Elena. For years, she had shielded Isabella from the harshness of the world as best she could, scrimping, hustling, surviving, and yet here was a man of unimaginable wealth bending the rules, defying expectations simply because he could. They moved to a quiet corner booth together, Alexander insisting that Isabella sit in the safest, most comfortable seat, her legs dangling above the floor. He gestured for Elena to join them. Reluctantly, she did, still unsure whether this man, once her lost love, was now a stranger or the hero her daughter needed. As they sat, Alexander tried to bridge the gap of 15 lost years with conversation, asking about Isabella, her daily life, her dreams. Elena spoke cautiously, at first in fragments, revealing the struggles of single parenthood, financial hardship, and the constant battle to provide just enough. Her words painted a picture of resilience and courage, a quiet strength forged in adversity. Isabella chimed in, sharing her dreams of writing stories, of exploring far-off lands through books, of a life where hope wasn't measured in coins but in possibility. Alexander listened, absorbing every word, every small gesture, every spark of bravery. The realization hit him. This little girl, once starving and alone, had the power to reignite the humanity he had lost in the pursuit of power and wealth. But the reunion was bittersweet. Elena's caution reminded Alexander that life had not been kind to them. Threats, debts, and the harsh realities of survival lingered like shadows just beyond the restaurant's glow. He knew that feeding Isabella tonight was only the beginning, a spark, not the resolution. Alexander's resolve hardened. No more would he sit idle, letting fear or circumstance dictate their lives. If Isabella's innocence had awakened his soul, then Elena's presence reminded him of a promise long overdue: to fight, to protect, to reclaim the lives they deserved. Just as the three settled into a fragile rhythm, Elena's phone buzzed. Her eyes widened, and a shadow crossed her face. Alexander noticed immediately. Someone was watching, tracking, waiting. Danger was closer than they realized. And this time, it wasn't poverty or hunger. It was something far more sinister. The restaurant's warm glow did little to mask the cold dread that suddenly settled over Alexander. Elena's hands trembled as she stared at her phone, her eyes darting nervously toward the entrance. Alexander leaned closer. "What is it?" he asked softly, his voice steady but sharp. Elena swallowed hard. "It's Miguel," she admitted, the name dragging out like a warning. "He's found us." Alexander's chest tightened. The world he controlled, corporate boardrooms, high-profile events, exclusive residences, had never prepared him for a predator like Miguel. He had dealt with hostile rivals and political maneuverings, but nothing had the raw, cruel intensity of a man who sought to control through fear, manipulation, and violence. "Found you?" Alexander pressed. "Yes," Elena whispered, her eyes filling with tears. "For 2 years we thought we'd escaped. I've moved us constantly, changed addresses, stayed off the radar. But he's relentless. He knows our routines. He knows Isabella." Isabella, still clutching her small basket of flowers, looked between them with wide, confused eyes. "Mama, what's wrong?" Elena forced a smile, brushing back her daughter's hair. "Nothing, sweetheart. Just a grown-up problem." Alexander's mind raced. The luxurious safety of Leclerc suddenly felt fragile. Outside, the city thrummed with life, unaware that a storm of danger was closing in. He realized immediately that offering a meal tonight was only the first act. Real protection required strategy, resources, and the courage to confront a man who would stop at nothing. "I won't let him touch either of you," Alexander said, his voice low and unwavering. "Not here, not anywhere. You're not alone anymore." Elena shook her head, conflicted between hope and fear. "You don't understand. He's dangerous. Money won't stop him. He has connections. He could make this worse." Alexander's jaw tightened. "Then we fight smarter. Security, lawyers, everything we need. You won't have to survive anymore. You'll live. Isabella will live." The weight of his promise pressed down like gravity. Isabella, sensing the urgency but not the full danger, squeezed his hand and whispered, "Papa?" Alexander nodded. "Yes, for now, and always. I promise." Later that evening, as the city skyline glittered through the restaurant's windows, Alexander implemented the first phase of protection. Guards were discreetly stationed near the entrances. Cameras monitored every corner, and a secure route home for Elena and Isabella was mapped. Each step was calculated, every precaution designed to ensure that Miguel's reach was thwarted before it could extend further. But Miguel, as Elena warned, was cunning. Within days, subtle signs of his presence began to emerge. A man, loitering near the park where Isabella played. An unfamiliar car parked across from their apartment. A shadowy figure appearing in the corner of her vision while shopping. Each observation tightened Elena's chest with fear, but Alexander remained a pillar of calm, reassuring her that they were ready. The tension escalated one rainy evening when Elena returned home from grocery shopping to find the apartment door slightly ajar. Her pulse raced, and her breath caught in her throat. She froze in the doorway, her eyes scanning the dim interior. And there he was, Miguel, sitting casually on the couch, flipping through Isabella's school drawings as if he owned the place. A cruel smile curved his lips. "Hello, Elena," he said, his tone deceptively calm. "Nice place. Much better than that dump you were living in before. Looks like your little millionaire friend treats you well." Elena's knees nearly buckled, but she forced herself to stand tall. "Get out," she said, voice trembling but firm. Miguel ignored her. "I see your daughter has a new guardian angel. Cute. But remember, she's mine if you don't pay up. 48 hours, $100,000 cash, or you never see her again." The gravity of the threat struck Alexander immediately when Elena called him in a trembling voice. His fury was like a physical force, burning through his calm exterior. He refused to negotiate with fear or money alone. Miguel thrived on control and intimidation. Giving in once would only embolden him. Alexander realized that protecting them would require more than wealth. It would require strategy, courage, and a willingness to confront the danger head-on. He activated every resource at his disposal: private investigators, security teams, and legal advisors. But more than that, he prepared himself to stand in front of the people he loved and declare that no one, not Miguel, not anyone, would harm them while he was there. The stakes had escalated from kindness to survival. The warmth of a shared meal had been replaced by the icy tension of a predator's threat. Yet through it all, Isabella remained blissfully unaware of the depth of the danger. She still laughed in Alexander's presence, still found wonder in the simplest moments, still believed that the world could be fair, and that innocence became his anchor. Alexander vowed that the first act of kindness, the meal, the invitation, would be the start of a larger, unyielding commitment, to protect his new family at all costs, from a threat that had waited too long to strike. Miguel's shadow loomed closer with every passing hour. Surveillance confirmed he had followed them to the grocery store, learned their routines, and planned his next move. Alexander knew the countdown had begun, 48 hours to neutralize the threat or risk losing everything he had vowed to protect. Rain streaked the glass of Alexander's car as he drove through the city streets, mind racing. Every traffic light, every pedestrian, every shadow seemed like a potential threat. He kept his hands tight on the steering wheel, his jaw clenched. The clock was ticking. 48 hours. Miguel's ultimatum left no room for error. Inside the secure penthouse, Elena paced nervously, trying to calm Isabella, who had sensed the tension but didn't fully understand it. Alexander had instructed her to stay inside, away from windows, away from the city's gaze, but Isabella's wide eyes constantly flicked toward the rain-soaked streets. Alexander's phone buzzed, a private message from one of his security consultants. "He's close. Apartment watched. Moves tonight." Every nerve in Alexander's body went on alert. He had prepared for this, but anticipation brought a rush of adrenaline that threatened to shake his calm demeanor. Tonight, Miguel would either be stopped or the consequences would be catastrophic. Alexander gathered his team in the apartment's discreet command room. Blueprints of the building, camera feeds, and escape routes flickered on the screens. Every detail had been scrutinized: entrances, exits, hidden stairwells, parking garages. His wealth and influence could not protect them physically if he didn't anticipate Miguel's moves. "Keep them together. Watch every angle. He's desperate. He'll make a mistake, Alexander instructed. His voice was calm, but his eyes burned with the intensity of a man who had finally found a cause worth fighting for. Elena, standing nearby, gripped Alexander's hand. "Be careful," she whispered. He's not just a man with money. He's dangerous." Alexander nodded. "I've faced ruthless men in business. This isn't different. Only this time it's personal." At precisely midnight, the apartment door's security alert flashed red. Miguel had moved. Cameras showed him slipping into a side corridor, confident, calculating, armed with threats and greed. Alexander watched from the monitors, tense but focused. He moved quietly, leading a small, skilled team toward the entry points Miguel could use. Every footstep was deliberate, silent. The team spread out, a silent web of protection ready to ensnare the intruder. Inside the apartment, Elena held Isabella close, whispering reassurances. "It's okay, baby. Papa is here. You're safe." Isabella's small fingers clung to her mother's sleeve, but the warmth of Alexander's earlier gestures, the meals, the kindness, the gentle encouragement, had instilled trust, and that trust now became a shield. Miguel stepped into the apartment, scanning the dimly lit living room. His eyes glinted with menace as he spotted Isabella's drawings scattered on the coffee table. "So, this is her life, huh?" he sneered. "And you're the one who thinks you can protect them?" Alexander stepped forward, voice firm and unwavering. "Leave now, Miguel. Walk out and you leave them unharmed. Otherwise—" Miguel laughed cruelly. "Otherwise what? You'll pay me? You'll call the cops? Do you really think that will stop me?" The tension was electric. Alexander's team flanked the intruder, ready to intervene. But Alexander knew words could be a weapon, too. "You've spent years terrorizing the people you claim to control. But this time you picked the wrong family to threaten. Not just because I won't let you hurt them, but because you will no longer have freedom to manipulate or intimidate. Every move you make has consequences." Miguel smirked, but a flicker of doubt crossed his face. He had always relied on fear and unpredictability. Alexander's calm authority, backed by unseen but undeniable power, disrupted his rhythm. Suddenly, a loud alarm blared, the final security protocol Alexander had set. Lockdown doors, reinforced entrances, automatic camera recording. Miguel froze as the apartment's perimeter sealed around him. Alexander advanced a step, keeping his tone measured but lethal. "You underestimate what people will do to protect the ones they love. You won't harm them. Not tonight. Not ever." Miguel's smirk faltered. The realization hit him. He was outmaneuvered, trapped not by brute force, but by intelligence, planning, and unwavering resolve. With a final furious glare, Miguel made one desperate attempt to reach the balcony, but Alexander's team intercepted, subduing him quickly. Elena exhaled, relief flooding her as Isabella buried her face in her mother's shoulder, unaware of how close danger had come. Alexander knelt, placing a reassuring hand on Elena's shoulder. "It's over. He won't touch you again." The police arrived shortly after, taking Miguel into custody. But Alexander knew this was only the first battle. Threats like Miguel rarely ended neatly. As he looked at Elena and Isabella, safe for the first time in years, he realized that protecting a family wasn't a one-night victory. It was a lifelong commitment. And somewhere in the shadows, danger still lingered, waiting for the next opportunity. The first rays of morning sunlight filtered through the penthouse windows, falling on a city that seemed peaceful. Yet to Alexander, it was still a world tinged with danger. Miguel was behind bars, secured by law enforcement, but the psychological scars of fear and uncertainty lingered like shadows over Elena and Isabella. Alexander stayed close, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. He watched Elena and Isabella cautiously navigate their new life, aware that trust, once broken, took time to rebuild. He had learned in business that success required strategy, but he now understood that healing required patience, presence, and unwavering love. Breakfast was the first test. Elena carefully prepared a simple meal while Isabella helped, humming softly, a rare smile on her lips. Alexander joined them at the table, keeping conversation light but attentive. "You know," Isabella said between bites, "this toast tastes better than the ones Mama and I used to make when we were alone." Elena smiled, eyes glistening. "It's the same ingredients, baby. Just a little more love." Alexander reached out, squeezing both their hands. "And now, it's a family effort. Every morning, every meal, we do it together." This small, ordinary act was revolutionary for them. For years, survival had dictated their lives. Now, choice, joy, and shared responsibility framed every decision. Over the next days, Alexander encouraged Elena to reestablish routines that had been disrupted by fear. Shopping, walking through Central Park, even returning briefly to her studies. Each small victory reinforced her autonomy. "Life isn't about hiding from threats," Alexander told her one afternoon, as they watched Isabella play with other children at a nearby park. "It's about building a foundation so strong that fear can't touch you." Elena nodded slowly, realizing that this wasn't just reassurance, it was a blueprint for reclaiming her life. And Isabella, observing their interactions, absorbed these lessons unconsciously, learning resilience and safety from their steady presence. Evenings became ritualized moments of connection. They cooked together, read books, and shared stories. Isabella's laughter returned, a sound so pure it made Alexander feel a fulfillment he had never known in the boardrooms and penthouses of Manhattan. One night, as Isabella drew pictures at the kitchen table, she looked up at Alexander. "Papa, will you always be here?" Alexander's throat tightened. "As long as you want me to be, Isa. Forever." Elena, standing nearby, pressed a hand to her chest, overwhelmed by emotion. The past, years of fear, loss, and separation, felt momentarily erased by the quiet, resilient joy in their home. Alexander commissioned subtle security upgrades that were as invisible as they were effective. Reinforced doors, monitored entrances, emergency protocols, and trained personnel. But he also realized that safety wasn't just physical, it was emotional. He nurtured Elena's confidence, Isabella's courage, and their shared trust. One evening, watching Isabella curl up with a book, Alexander reflected. The act that had begun with a simple meal had grown into a sanctuary. The restaurant had been the spark, but now their home, their routines, their shared laughter, their family, had become the flame. Alexander and Elena also began to reestablish connections outside their immediate circle. Elena returned to her studies, supported by Alexander's encouragement. Isabella began school, where she thrived academically and socially, guided by her mother and protected by the sense of security Alexander had built. Through these experiences, each family member transformed. Alexander shifted from isolated billionaire to engaged father and partner. Elena rebuilt self-confidence and learned to trust again. Isabella blossomed from a cautious, fearful child to a playful, curious, and resilient girl. One evening, as the three watched the sunset from the penthouse balcony, Isabella turned to Alexander and whispered, "Thank you, Papa, for keeping us safe." Elena rested her head on his shoulder. "You didn't just protect us. You gave us our lives back." Alexander felt a profound fulfillment. Wealth, power, and influence had once been his measure of success, but now, success was measured by smiles, laughter, and shared meals. True victory was in the restoration of a family, in healing wounds no money could ever fully buy. While the immediate danger of Miguel had passed, Alexander knew vigilance was essential. Yet, As he observed Elena and Isabella, he also realized that they had begun to reclaim joy, independence, and hope, and the foundation for their future, built on love, courage, and protection, was now unshakable. Months passed, and the penthouse that once felt like a fortress of survival transformed into a home of warmth, laughter, and purpose. Alexander had come to realize that protecting his family was not enough. He wanted to ensure that no other child or single mother would face the fear and scarcity that Elena and Isabella had endured. With Elena by his side, Alexander launched the Carter Foundation, dedicated to helping single mothers and children at risk. The mission was simple, yet powerful. Provide not just financial aid, but access to education, mentorship, housing, and emotional support. Elena, who had once struggled to keep food on the table, now found herself at the heart of a network designed to empower women like her. She spoke at events, sharing her story with authenticity that resonated deeply. Her voice carried the weight of lived experience, inspiring others to overcome adversity. Even Isabella, though young, became a symbol of hope. She participated in foundation activities, drawing, performing, and sharing her story of resilience. Her crooked glasses and patched clothes were no longer symbols of poverty. They were badges of courage, proof that a small act of kindness could change lives. One afternoon, as she distributed flowers at a community event, she told a reporter, "I used to think I didn't belong anywhere. Now I know I can help others feel like they belong too." The sincerity in her voice went viral online, with thousands sharing her message and commenting on the courage of one small girl who refused to give up. Alexander's empire remained, but the way he wielded his influence shifted. Board meetings and corporate dinners continued, but his priorities were no longer dictated by profit alone. Every decision now carried the question, does this help someone else? Does this build something meaningful? He began mentoring young entrepreneurs from disadvantaged backgrounds, hosting workshops, and opening doors that had once been closed. His story, of a billionaire humbled and humanized by a single child, became a blueprint for ethical wealth. Even as they found stability and purpose, challenges arose. Miguel's reach had been curtailed, but whispers of threats and retaliation lingered. Navigating bureaucracy, legal hurdles, and skeptics required Alexander and Elena to remain vigilant. But their bond, forged in adversity, strengthened their resolve. Elena often reminded him, "We can't let fear decide our future. We have a chance to rewrite what's possible." Alexander nodded, knowing that the greatest battles were often fought not with fists or money, but with vision, resilience, and integrity. The media began to follow the family's journey, documenting their transformation. Headlines highlighted the billionaire who had once only known glass walls and chandeliers, now advocating for children on city streets. The images were striking. Alexander kneeling beside a child learning to read, Elena distributing meals, Isabella proudly presenting her artwork. Social media shared stories of other children inspired by Isabella's courage, women empowered by Elena's advocacy, and young entrepreneurs guided by Alexander's mentorship. The story spread organically, resonating worldwide. People commented, "This is real wealth. This is real change." Through all the public attention, the family remained grounded in their private routines. Morning breakfasts, bedtime stories, weekend walks, and playful cooking sessions kept them connected. Alexander often marveled at how a simple act, allowing a poor girl into his restaurant, had cascaded into a movement that changed countless lives. One evening, watching Isabella asleep in Elena's arms, Alexander whispered, "This is why it all matters." Elena smiled, resting her head against his shoulder. Their gaze drifted to the window where the city lights glimmered like stars. The empire was no longer defined by wealth. It was defined by love, courage, and the lives they touched. As the Carter Foundation expanded, new opportunities and risks emerged. Influential donors, competing interests, and unforeseen dangers loomed. But for Alexander, Elena, and Isabella, every challenge became an opportunity to reaffirm their mission, to protect, empower, and inspire. And somewhere deep in the heart of the city, the echo of a little girl's brave voice, Isabella's voice, continued to ripple outward, changing the world one life at a time. The spring sunlight bathed the city in a soft, golden glow, a perfect reflection of the warmth inside the Carter family home. After months of rebuilding, fighting, and growing together, Alexander, Elena, and Isabella had reached a place of profound peace, a place they had once only dreamed of. To celebrate their journey, Alexander and Elena decided to hold an intimate ceremony, symbolizing their commitment not just to each other, but to the life they had rebuilt. Isabella, glowing with excitement, helped plan every detail, from the flowers to the music, determined that this day would reflect their shared love and resilience. The garden behind their penthouse was transformed into a luminous wonderland. Soft lanterns swayed in the gentle breeze, laughter and music filling the air. Close friends, family, and a few inspiring figures from their foundation joined, witnessing the union of two hearts tempered by struggle and strengthened by purpose. As Alexander took Elena's hands in his, he whispered, "You've shown me what love, courage, and resilience truly are. Today, I vow to honor and protect this family forever." Elena's eyes glistened with tears. "You gave us hope when we had none. You gave us safety when we were afraid. You gave us love when we thought we didn't deserve it. Today, I vow to stand with you and to never stop believing in the life we've built together." Isabella, standing between them, clasped their hands tightly. "I promise to love you both with everything I have. This is my family forever." The wedding was more than a celebration. It was a testament to transformation. A little girl who had once been barred from a restaurant, a mother who had lived in fear, and a billionaire who had chased wealth without purpose had all become something greater together. Their story, once rooted in exclusion and struggle, had blossomed into hope, empowerment, and unconditional love. Photographs and videos of the day went viral. Isabella's joyful laughter, Elena's radiant smile, and Alexander's proud, protective gaze captured hearts worldwide. Social media erupted. "This is real love. This is real family. This is hope." Viewers shared stories of their own hardships, inspired by the family's resilience and the profound power of compassion. In the quiet moments after the celebration, the three of them sat together on their balcony, overlooking the city that had once seemed so harsh and unforgiving. Alexander reflected aloud, "I thought I had everything: money, power, influence. But none of it mattered until I learned to give, until I learned to protect, to nurture, and to love without expectation." Elena added softly, "Strength isn't just surviving. It's creating a life where love, safety, and joy are possible for those you care about." Isabella snuggled between them, her small hands holding theirs. "And kindness can change everything." Isabella's journey, from sitting outside a restaurant clutching wilted flowers to standing proudly as a symbol of hope and resilience, became the heart of their legacy. Alexander and Elena's love story intertwined with hers, proving that the smallest acts of compassion can ripple outward, reshaping lives in ways that no one could predict. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the city, the Carter family looked toward the future with confidence and joy. The foundation they built continued to expand, supporting more children and families, while their home remained a sanctuary of love, laughter, and protection. The story that began with a single act of courage, Isabella's bravery in the face of exclusion, had grown into a movement of hope, demonstrating that wealth, power, or status only become meaningful when used to uplift others. And as they watched the city lights twinkle below, Alexander whispered, No matter what comes next, we face it together. Forever. Elena and Isabella smiled, their hands intertwined. Forever, they echoed.